Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, June 10th, 2015 to order. Can I have a roll call, please, Mrs. Klein?
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Mrs. Wachowski?
Here.
Mrs. Evans?
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Lewis?
Here.
And Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr.
I'm
Pat?
here.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mr. Nielsen?
Here. Thank you.
We're all here. Thanks for catching that. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pat?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Moved it over here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anything else? That's a surprise.
Sorry, I handwrote my list this
That's
time.
okay. That's okay.
All right. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Would anyone like to make a comment? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So-
moved. Motion by Mrs. Klein. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And item 5, consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove personnel report from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. School board announcements. Are there any announcements?
I would just like to say thank you to the FHS staff and administration for another wonderful graduation ceremony. They do a great job every year, and I know it's a ton of work for them. A special shout out to Mrs. Bolus, because I know she does an awful lot of it. So thank you to all of them.
Thank you.
Wonderful week of, sorry, Jeff, wonderful week of concerts last week. And it was really neat to see the music department and how they're working in a more collaborative sense with the new space and everything. And you're having choir concerts with band and orchestra, and it was neat. And they did a wonderful job, so.
Great.
I was just going to recognize those students that were part of the FHS Honors Night during the last meeting, sort of explaining my absence as well. But it was a great event to be a part of, and I think their achievements throughout their years of participation on different activities in the high school and some of the scholarships that were awarded, it was great to be a part of that event. But great to see all of the students that were there. It was a huge number of students.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, I'd like to say I went to the Connects Learning Center graduation celebration this year. They didn't do the actual graduation, but it was still very nice, and I brought back their book. I'll pass it down if the board wants to look at it, or if anyone wants to take it home. But it's very nice to see those students. All right, thank you. School board calendar, item 7. Regular board meeting on June 24th, 2015, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. A regular board meeting July 15, 2015, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. And a board roundtable is scheduled for August 12th, 2015, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 8A, the SWSA contract approval. This is an action item. Dr. Pat.
This is an annual approval that we seek from the board regarding our affiliation with the Southwestern School Alliance. This is an advocacy group that represents us at the state and with different stakeholders in terms of legislators or bodies that may be in support of public education. So we would recommend approval of this contract for the 2015-16 school year.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the 2015-16 SWSA contract?
I will make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Is there any discussion?
Just to confirm that this is the $3,000 fee. We paid a $3,000 fee to be a member of this association or organization. Do we have any other involvement other than being a part of this group and having them kind of advocate on the school's behalf?
Pretty much they advocate on our behalf is what it is as a statewide group. There's 30 plus schools usually, so we've got somewhat of a strengthened voice. And I would say it's one of those ones, it's nice to be able to have that pulse. We do have a lobbyist that we pay for during the course of the year that represents our voice on things. Whether it makes any difference or not remains to be seen most times, but that's the way it is when you deal with state government, so.
So, and which dues are we paying for? Because there's two, nothing's checked. Is it
The what?
there's nothing checked in the document?
We pay for the registration fee, and then there's also an SSLC fee. That's because we're a Chapter 220 school. We're phasing out of that, but each year, we don't add new kids to our roles from the 220 program, but we do have some that are still in our schools that will be eventually phasing out, and that cost will eventually go away.
But it's not 3 plus 3, it's just 3.
It's just 3,000 because the Chapter 220, they're paying for that out of money they have in reserve. So even though we have that additional feature, there's no extra cost for it.
Yeah, it's noted right on there.
Okay, it wasn't
Any-
checked on the box, so.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Larson, second by Mr. Alexandrovich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8B, the roundtable topic, just a brief discussion on that. Dr. Pats, did you want to start?
Yeah, we have decided that, the board had decided that on August 12th at 6 o'clock, we would hold a roundtable discussion regarding topics that may have been in line with what we were going to do with the original retreat. At this time, Janet and I had met, and we talked about the list that was sent to us by each of you, if you sent them in, and we thought that taking a look at the communication aspect of the board as well as long-range planning would be two significant topics to talk about in the roundtable format. And I would ask that if you have any questions for us or you want us to prepare anything, particularly regarding the long-range planning situation, let us know ahead of time so we can have it prepared. Otherwise, the roundtable is meant to be just that general discussion that would lead to possible, further action if the board felt it was necessary.
But by long-term planning, you're not necessarily trying to go through the SWOT analysis of a...
No,
No, okay.
no. It's more idea generated.
And when you say communication, do you mean just the broad topic of communication, or communication within the board, or communication with the community?
Board communication with the
Internal
community.
board.
and-
Okay,
But there again, the roundtable could say internal communication, external.
okay, so it could cover any of the
Sure.
above, okay, thanks.
So we're not doing anything related to goals then, for looking toward the following year? We're not, when are we going to be generating, or looking at goals that we do each year?
Well, we have the current goal that's being worked on, that you and Mrs. Larson are working on, and if the board wanted to work on another goal, we can address that at another board meeting if that's the desire.
Well, we have a new
of the
board member, so I don't know if he even knows what the goals are, or...
I think we latched onto that goal to continue it into this year to finish that.
It's a big goal.
Right,
Yeah.
we had to continue it.
Yeah. I kind of think that it might be preliminary to talk about goals before we have this roundtable discussion, because we may very well have some items that come out of this more detailed discussion that we do want to work on for the coming year, either related to communication or long-range planning. So it might make more sense to put that off until after this discussion.
These were some of the items that were on the list. Other items will be brought up at other board meetings or future roundtable discussions, but communication was mentioned by several board members, and I think long-range planning by 2 board members. So you can only talk about so much at one discussion, so.
Okay.
But there's nothing stopping us if the board wants a goal, to have a goal. Is that agreeable then? Consensus? All right, then we'll move on with that. Thank you. Item 9, reports and presentations. Pupil Services Report, Sabre Academy update. Mrs. Kroll.
Tonight, we're going to present to you the results of our program review of our Sabre Academy. I met last week with Mr. Lewis, and we talked a lot about the content and what you might be interested in hearing. I also provided you kind of a summary in your packet, so you'd have a little bit of background. And we'll also go through the major parts of the review, as well as some of our recommendations. For those of you who just need a little reminder, Sabre Academy is an alternative education program that's housed at our high school. It's part of our high school. And this was really designed for students who aren't successful in the traditional high school model and who were at risk for not graduating. So that was the purpose of that. Sabre Academy began in 2008. And it originally, we wrote a grant through DPI for alternative education, and it was funded about $312,000 over a 5-year period of time to start that program up. And since that time, it's supported by the budget for the district. The Sabre review was co-chaired by Susie Rock and myself, and team members are indicated right there on our first slide. You'll see that we had a nice representation of pupil services, special ed, and regular ed, as well as administration on this team. Tonight, our teachers, our Sabre Academy teachers, Tracy Sneed and Lori Dykstra, are going to share their PowerPoint about the Sabre review, and then at the end, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Good evening. The purpose of our review was we felt that every department has to go through a review type cycle, and so we felt after 7 years it was probably our turn. So we decided to take a look at what our curriculum and our program had and how we could improve or things that we're doing right. So that was our purpose.
Our process through the review was, first we reviewed literature, research, and best practices in alternative education. We reviewed data from beginning of the program until up to last year. We reviewed parent, student, and staff survey data, and we took a self-assessment, Tracy, myself, and Ms. Rock. In our literature review, we found that students are in alternative education for many reasons, but primarily due to poor attendance, discipline problems, external stressors, social or emotional difficulties, or academic remediation. We also found that effective alternative education programs are most successful when they have nurturing staff, personalization, accelerated advancement, family support, school collaboration, community connections, and focus on vocational education.
The Sabre student data was from 2008 to 2014. Historically, when we first began Sabre Academy, it was primarily for seniors that had pretty significant credit deficiencies. Most recently, we have moved up to juniors and even sophomore and some freshmen. Primarily, the students that attend Sabre Academy average about 6.5 credits every 6 months. 75% of the Sabre Academy students remain in Sabre until graduation. 9% will return back out to traditional scheduled classes, and 7% have moved to alternative sites. And then we had 4% that did withdraw or were removed from the program due to failure to follow the contract. Just a note, 100% of our students who attend FHS and Sabre Academy or another alternative site all do graduate. 75% of our students attend a half-day Sabre Academy program and then half-day traditional classes. 20% attend half-day only, and then they go to either work or some type of therapy or something that's kind of related to what they need for the other half a day, and then 5% attend only one block during the course of the day for Sabre Academy. Up here we have some pictures. The picture to the left is our most recent one of the lip dub that we were able to participate in. This was the group that was with us for that. We had other kids that were off in other areas, but that was our group that stood outside in our assigned spot. The group to the right was an autos presentation by the Army. They had a Humvee that came in to the auto shop, and we were invited to go down due to the fact that we do have some of our students that are interested in auto tech. So we went down there and took a look at the Humvee and talked with some of the recruiters and so on.
So through our surveys, we surveyed current students and graduates. We surveyed parents of current students and graduates, and we also surveyed the current high school staff. We found that students value a feeling of belonging and being prepared for post-high school life. We found that parents want improvements in academics and behaviors, and they value communication. And our staff feel Sabre Academy is primarily for credit recovery, and they would like more involvement in some placement decisions.
These next two slides are kind of the meat of the review. Basically what we used is we used the NARIN 9, which is a quality indicator for alternative programs. The name says it, there are 9 facets, and basically what they do is they rank you from gold, silver, bronze, and down to in process. And what we did is we passed around just a sample of one of the rubrics that we had to go through for our self-assessment, so you should hopefully have that in front of you. So if we take a look, we've got accelerated academic curriculum, we've got strong literacy components, self-management program, personalized curriculum, project work orientation, smaller school and class sizes, planning and administrative support systems, collaborative community models, and comprehensive staff development model. In all of these, between myself, Lori, and Ms. Rock, we were able to score ourselves, and we were pleased to see that we scored in the gold and silver areas for all of the 9 quality indicators, so we were very pleased with that.
We included a few other pictures of students in Sabre Academy. This is an opportunity that we had to go and work with the art teacher. She did a mini lesson with us after we read a few novels that had some students in the books, and one of their coping strategies was to draw or paint. So we thought it would be fun to do a mini lesson in the art room. We also included a picture of a field trip we took the students to Discovery World this year, so they had the opportunity to get some hands-on science experience that correspond with some of the curriculum that they're doing, and an opportunity to earn credit in a more hands-on way.
So out of this review, what we came up with were several program recommendations, and we broke those into 3 different categories: instructional, procedural, enrollment, and staffing. The items that are highlighted in green are the ones that we are going to target this year more heavily than the others. All of them we always target, but these are the 3 that we're really going to focus on, and those are continuing to develop personalized learning opportunities. Sabre Academy is always evolving, so even though it seems like we have things set, we really don't. We're always evolving, so as things change out in the traditional area, we change it in Sabre Academy so we can stay aligned. We want to increase academic and career planning, and we also want to revise our intake and exit process to make sure that it's effective and that we're collecting, excellent data. These next 2 slides are some Sabre quotes from students that are currently in our program. We asked them to just kind of tell you what they thought, and at this time as you're reading it, if there are any questions that you may have for us, please feel free to ask at this point.
Just have a quick question. Do you have any knowledge of how many kids in the Sabre Academy are involved in the 180 awards program each year?
I know I myself personally had 2 or 3 that I know I nominated. I don't know, did you have any?
I think I had 1 student.
Okay.
So generally, I would say probably 3 to 5 every year we'll have that go to the 180 program.
So are they there for the whole year or for the semester? Or?
It depends. It really depends upon what their need is, how fast they kind of get through what they need to do, how motivated they are to get out. Some kids don't want to get out because they like the environment. So, I mean, we have to kind of watch that. But no, not necessarily. So it's very individualized, so it just depends upon what the individual need of each student is.
We typically work with the guidance counselors, and they track their credits, and then when they earn their credits that they need, there's the opportunity for them to move back into traditional classes.
And can they recover all credits? Your report seemed I got the impression it was just English and social studies, but they can also recover science and math
Yes,
credits?
all the core areas they can do. We do health, social studies, science, English, math, vocational and career education, and any other types of electives, other than foreign language, because I can barely speak English, so. So, but yeah, pretty much everything, you know, and then we support them in some of the more specialized areas that they take in the traditional classes.
And I think most of them have IEPs or not, is that
No.
correct?
No,
Well, most of these do not?
No, these are regular, this is a regular ed program.
this isn't special education.
Well, none of these have IEPs.
Some of the students do.
'Cause I thought I saw in the report that a good number of them had, like 35 out of 49 had IEPs. Is that not correct? Or
No, that is
I don't think that's correct.
No.
But I
35 have an identified educational,
Yeah, that was from all of our data, I think going back.
For
I
over-
don't have it in front of me, but I think so. But, you know, it's just like the traditional high school. You do have special ed students within the traditional high school, so you're going to have them in these programs too, but it is a regular ed program.
and you mentioned 49. Is that like over the course of a year? Or, I mean, how many in any day do you have? What's your capacity, I guess, on a
In a given
daily?
day?
Yeah.
So we can house up to 12 to 14 students in each of our programs. So there are actually 3 sessions. So there's 2 in the morning. Lori's in the morning with me, and so I can house 12, you can house 6 to 8. And then in the afternoon, I house 12. So, but we also have kids that kind of come and go. So depending upon the need, we might have a block here or a block there that a student may come in for just a specific topic area, and then we house them.
So say a student is really doing well with all their credits, but they failed biology. They could schedule a block into Sabre to just work on that credit, so then they can get back into their other class. So that's what that kind of a thing would be.
And there's 2 FTEs now assigned to the program?
It's really 1.5. Lori does her other half in special ed.
Okay. Then one of your recommendation was to add another?
Yeah, right now we have 3 sessions, and we really tried, up until last year, Tracy was the only act in town, and she had the 2 sessions, the morning and the afternoon. And I took Lori out of special ed and put her in there for 1 session a day, because that's really our goal, and we've had a waiting list. So we thought, we tried that last year, and it worked really well, and we still have kids who are waiting. I don't know if Susie might want to talk to that.
Next year, we're starting the year out, and Lori and Tracy have full sections set and ready to go. So Mrs. Sneed's morning is set with 12. We kept 1 open seat just in case we, can anticipate someone coming late. But it's important to note that we increased enrollment really because a lot of our Tier 2 intervention kids right now receive interventions freshman year and sophomore year, but when it gets to junior year and senior year, they really fall behind in English and math, and there's not really a targeted intervention. And so our hope is to integrate some of that intervention also into Sabre Academy, because primarily a lot of those kids are credit deficient as well. So it's kind of there's 2 needs to increase staffing, that intervention piece, but then also that credit recovery piece, and we're seeing more of a need for that.
In addition, I would just add that we do have, as you saw from some of the data and the reports, we have quite a few kids who have mental health issues that participate in this program because, and I hear some of them when I was in there, a student came through and he had his lunch tray, and somebody said, what are you doing having lunch in here? And he said, I can't stand the cafeteria, the noise is just overwhelming to me. So we have students who really need a small environment. It's hard to find that in a big high school. So we also have that component, and that has increased over the years.
So if we need to increase sessions, and we have students with mental health issues that need this class, we have this problem, and I'm going to call it a problem, with special ed students in private schools where they can't take care of some of the special ed students, so they send them back to public schools. How are they handling this alternative school? Are they sending them back to public schools also? If they must have the same kind of need we do to have.
In private schools?
In
you're
private
saying?
schools.
Mhm. I don't know. I don't really recall us having a lot of kids who transfer in and go directly to an alternative program from a private school. That just doesn't seem like something that we've seen
No,
very
usually
often.
they'll start in the traditional, and then we'll see what the need is, and then if it's a need, then we could transfer them in, if they're transferred out of a parochial school, but other than that, they don't go right from parochial to us. Not typically, I mean, I'm not gonna say never, because
So it's
tomorrow I'll get one.
it's possible some of them just aren't being taken care of then, though. Yeah, most
Possible.
likely.
So how does the funding work then? Are they counted as students? I mean, is it considered a separate school, or are they just part of Franklin in general in terms of enrollment?
Sabre Academy,
Right.
they're just counted like a regular student, and we receive funding the same way.
So it's really just one student that just happens to spend their time in different parts of the building, but still just one.
We're a program within the school, so, you know, that's how it's looked at, so we're still part of the school, we still do all the school stuff, and the kids just come to us like they would go to a different class.
I understood that they had IEPs, but so generally, what's the easy way to say how they get in the program, get out? Who?
Basically, the process, I don't know, do you wanna?
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
It starts as an RTI team. We meet weekly as an administrative and student services staff, so counselors, school psychs, and social workers, and the administrators meet. And if there's a need, you know, based on credits, academics, behavior, attendance, we'll launch a referral. That counselor will then meet with the student and go over the reason for the referral. Then they'll contact the family, and then they'll schedule an intake meeting. And then at the intake meeting, the parent and the student, and then ideally counselor and administrator, and any other support staff that needs to be there. So Dr. Dwyer might be there, Mr. Finney might be there. Go over the plan for the student, like what are their goals during that intake meeting, and then we're at Sabre Academy.
Mrs. Klein, did you?
I do. Well, question, and this is probably going to seem really basic, but do you use the same curriculum as in the traditional classes, or is it the curriculum customized for each student?
The curriculum is mostly customized, and we do consult with all the departments to make sure that we're teaching the same concepts that they're teaching, but we may do it in a different way, or we may use some of their stuff. It just really kind of depends. I've had students that have come in from English, and we've done their English work, but in my room, where it's a smaller area, or we do, it just depends on what the need is.
Is the level of rigor comparable, do you think, or does that need to be adjusted sometimes also?
I think that's an area that we're addressing with the school right now as they're moving through, and we are looking at alternative options. Tracy and I are going to participate this summer in some of the project-based learning opportunities. Another thing, we're looking at potentially doing some online work. Currently, they use technology through some of the curriculum that we give them, but we don't have online courses to offer. So.
As far as the question to rigor, when Mike Katie was here, that was his big word, was rigor, so yes. Made sure that I set things up to be rigorous enough and to make sure that the kids are getting what they need. And yet, if we have some deficit areas that we need to teach to, that we can do that.
I think the best way to think about it is that the content is aligned to the standards. You know, so they might not be getting what every activity that a typical English class might get, but they could be doing an English project that might hit on English standards. It could even include some math standards. I mean, it could go across some of those things. And then you also saw some of the hands-on things that these kids learn better doing. So it's just a different way, but we're really working hard to make sure that what they're getting is aligned to the standards. So when we say they're getting a Franklin diploma, we can feel really proud and good about that.
Do they participate in state testing?
If I can just add, both of these professionals have a very specific license to teach alternative ed and specific training for that.
They do a good job. It's a good program.
Thank you.
The last slide that we had up, if there are no more questions. I shouldn't look at anybody.
Sorry.
I think you should.
Okay, the last slide that we had up, I don't know where it disappeared to.
Oh, there it
Okay. Because all of a sudden it was like there and been gone. On the left, you will see that this is a Dairy Queen cake, and that's kind of become our trademark for graduations. They each student gets Dairy Queen cake or a group of students. And off to the right is our most recent, last 6 that needed to graduate this year. And just kind of an interesting statistic that Lori and I were talking about this afternoon that we kind of threw together. There were approximately 366 students that went through graduation this past Sunday. And out of there, 24 of our Sabre students graduated over the course of this year, which is 6.5% of the senior class. So, you know, when we kind of put it in mathematical terms, we were like, wow, that's really cool. And so we really feel like, you know, we make a difference, you know, at least to 6.5%. And these are 6.5% of the kids that probably would not have graduated without the program.
I was going to say, another way to look at that is we're always being asked, what's our graduation rate? You take
Right.
those 6.5% out,
Exactly.
and our graduation rate doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
So commend to you.
Well, I know when I go to Connects, the students say they couldn't go to the regular high school. It's just not for them. So these students say the same thing, don't they? It's just,
Yes, they do.
It's just not for them.
Janet, that's a really good point, too, because I think we like to look at the fact that you know, this might be some steps sometimes that we try a student in Sabre Academy right within our high school to try and keep them in our community, in activities, and so on, but some of those kids can't make it, so maybe then they go to Connects.
Okay.
You know, so what we're trying to do is really create tiers for kids so that we have different options for what their needs really are.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 9B, Superintendent's Report, Community Survey. Dr. Katz.
Linda or Debbie, do you want to take that, or how do you want to do it?
You can start and we can jump in.
All right, last night, Linda and Debbie and I met via phone conference with Bill Foster from School Perceptions to address the goal that we have on hand that the board has acknowledged and supported in terms of having our focus be for looking at renovations, possible renovations in the future and improvements to our middle school. Bill asked us a number of questions in terms of narrowing the focus down to make sure that we were strictly zeroed in on the middle school, of which we indicated yes we were. We're not talking about athletics and we're not talking about anything else. And then asked, we put together a timeline, and what we will be doing, which was started today, we'll be looking at getting a list of architects to come in, because we're going to need to get a conceptual drawing, if you will, and some pricing to be able to have that information for the survey. The survey won't go out until about mid-year next year, so we've got a little bit of time to do that, but we need that time to be able to accumulate that information that's going on. What we told them at that meeting, and you know, what we did hypothetically was we would like the survey to go out, and if we saw that there was community support, that we potentially could look at the fall of 2016 as a possible time to officially bring it to the public in the form of a referendum. That's not a cut in stone. It was just a discussion point more than anything. So he is formulating a survey right now. He will pass that information on. We'll have Chris involved and Jim and Mark and so on. I'll forward that to the board. There'll be an interchange before we get a final document. You will see that and have a voice in that to make sure it's what you want. So as we move forward, it'll seem like it's a little slow right now until probably get into the school year. And then we have some concrete stuff, and same thing with the architects and so on. If and when we have drawings, you'll see them, you'll have your input. You know, and there was some comments made last night that were just obvious improvements on what we had last time that, you know, there were no brainers just in terms of the gym. So that was the bulk of the conversation, is looking at the timeline, looking at what we needed to do in terms of preparation to have the information before we go to the survey, and then having some of the basic information, like, you know, one of the questions that Bill had asked was, where are we in terms of debt, you know, going off the books and so on and so forth. And so that's where it's at.
On the
We did-
timeline, when you say mid-next year, I assume you mean mid-school year,
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes.
And I think he asked about enrollment, whether this was really enrollment or capacity driven. We did talk a little bit about the 4K issue. He gives us the capacity for 4K, but we really kind of need to know where the community is at on that issue. We suspect, as I think Steve has always indicated, that there will always be a group that's not in support of that, but we kind of need to know how big that group is or how strong they are. I think it's important to get that information in this survey.
The obvious angle for doing the improvements in the middle school is to bring sixth grade up.
Right.
With the three grades there, get better ownership at the middle school level, we get all that. Do you anticipate, I know this is kind of a document that's going to ebb and flow, but do you anticipate then using that 4K as another reason, if you will, for that? Or are we going to keep it more on the 6, 7, 8, and a leave capacity at the, or relieve capacity at the middle? at the
What we
elementary
talked about, Tim, is we can't avoid the need that, I strongly feel we need a 4K. We're one of, there are 98% of districts in the state that have it. The problem is, too many people associate 4K with a babysitting service. They don't know what it does. So for that reason, but to answer your question, our main focus that we indicated the bill last night was programming for the middle school, which included 6th grade. So programming was the issue, was the main issue. If that created capacity in our elementary schools, that may allow the district to initiate a 4K program. It wasn't to do that just to get a 4K program.
Yeah.
Is that
Right.
sort of the way you're?
Well, I knew it wouldn't be just to get a 4K, but I think that's definitely the way to go. Focus on the 6, 7, 8, focus on the programming, focus on that. A byproduct may be get a 4K down the road.
We
but-
we have to be transparent with it. We gotta say, it's an offshoot, it could happen.
Right.
But if we educate people, I think it'll be, a better way to go. But the primary focus is programming and capacity for 6, 7, 8 at the high school, at the middle school. Do you have anything, Debbie, that I forgot?
No, that was exactly our conversation, though, exactly what Mr. Nielsen said.
Any other comments, then? Thank you very much. Thanks for meeting. Item 9C is the Finance Report 2015-16 Budget Update. Mr. Milzer.
All right, tonight we have draft number 1 of the 15-16 budget. It's in board docs for you. In the table of contents, if you click on any of those, as in the past years, it'll take you into the document to whatever that item is, just to make it a little easier to navigate because it's 50 pages long. As I said, tonight's the first look at it and the introduction of it. We'll have draft number 2 in August at the annual meeting. We'll have the final draft in October when we have our information from the state, and you'll have 5 weeks to look this over and ask any questions. We won't adopt it until July 15th, that meeting. So you'll have plenty of time to go over it. It's really the culmination of all the initiatives that you've heard about, the things we're doing, the staffing plan that you've heard about earlier this year. But when we look at the tax picture and all of those kinds of things, all of the factors, the important factors, are estimates in there. And they'll be that way until October. But this budget will get us started July 1 for our fiscal year. We know it'll change in October based on the kids we actually get, the staff we actually have, and the amount of money we actually get from the state. So I'll introduce the budget tonight and go over some of the highlights, and then you'll have time to look it over and get back to me with any questions you have. Page 4 goes over budget assumptions and significant changes. Some of this we talked about earlier in the year. Enrollment being our main factor in the revenue limit calculation. We're looking at our enrollment going up 10 resident students for next year. Not a lot. We have actually more than that coming in, but we have students leaving too. So kind of a net plus 10 is what we're looking at. Because it's a state budget year, that's really a big issue this year because things are changing. The governor had initially said he had proposed that they would cut an amount from school districts, which for our school district would be about $600,000. And then we would get just a little bit of that back the second year, but really no increase in the revenue limit. Joint Finance Committee went around the state. They heard parents really telling them, you can't do that. And they decided to put that back in, at least so far. It's not a done deal, but that's where they're at, that they would put that in, and we wouldn't lose that money for next year.
You assume that in these numbers? These numbers reflect the
Mhm.
fact that you did not lose the 600,000?
Right.
Thank you.
And what that doesn't do, though, is really open up the revenue limit to us to have any additional money for the next 2 years. And that's kind of missing sometimes in the reporting, that under the budget proposal, there's an additional $319 million that goes into public education, but it goes into the school tax levy credit and directly to schools, but the revenue limit doesn't change, so it just flows straight through as property tax relief. So the money is there, we wouldn't be asking for them to find any more money, just what would the purpose be? But I don't think that's going to happen. Special education funding, they've indicated, is not going to change, so in this biennium, this will be the 8th straight year with no increase in special education funding from the state. At one time, they were supposed to pay 2/3 of the cost, but never really made it there and then just got rid of that. Additionally, what the Legislature's Joint Finance Committee has moved into is the voucher question, and increasing the voucher program around the state, taking caps off after 10 years, I think it was, and allowing that to ramp up. The thing that's sometimes missing and you don't hear is that in the past, that program was, first of all, directed at school districts that had schools that were failing, where parents needed a choice, and it's now expanded to school districts where parents, don't need a choice. The schools are doing fine, and it was also funded directly through state money. And in the proposal that's now in front of the legislature, it shifts from the state funding it directly to them taking the money away from public schools to fund this. So that's a big shift, and they're flying the flag over that one, saying, well, the money should follow the student. If they're leaving a public school, the money should go with them to a private school, which makes sense. But then you find out that 80% of the students don't attend public schools that take a voucher. They attend a private school and leave a private school to go to a voucher school. So the school district never counted them, never got any money for them, but now they're giving up money for them to pay for them. So there's a lot going on there that you don't necessarily see, and I wanted you to be aware of it. In other revenue, our integration aid is going down about $200,000 or 24%, and that's really just based on the fact that we don't have as many kids in the program as we used to. And I'm not sure exactly where it's at in the budget, but the governor's budget proposal did contain a provision to phase out the Chapter 220 program over a number of years by not allowing anyone else to come into it. So we would fare okay on that because our numbers aren't high, and we've been doing that for a while. Under transportation, this will be our last year with a 0% increase in our rates based on the contract that we negotiated for a 4-year freeze. And then there's the revenue graph, which shows that about 58% of our money comes from the local tax revenue, 34.8 comes from state and federal aid revenue, and 7.2 is local non-tax revenue. And as you look at that, the tax revenue and the state aid revenue work together to create our revenue limit. So as the state aid goes down, the taxes kind of fill in to complete the pie chart on that one. And again, we're projecting that we wouldn't have quite as much state aid coming in next year as this year. And under expenditures, that picture hasn't changed too much, still 77% going for salaries and benefits. Taking a look specifically at the estimates on the tax levy, for educating children, I'm projecting that that tax levy would go up about 4.6%, based on the fact that our district's equalized value went up 4.52% last year, which I believe is higher than the state average, which then has the state looking at us and saying, well, you're doing better than everybody else, you can pay a bigger share than you used to. Exactly how that will work, we don't know. I've had to put in some factors and estimates into the aid formula to do that, and we don't know how the Department of Public Instruction will do that. And we really won't know for sure until October. We'll get some idea on what they're thinking in July when they come out with their first estimate. But this could easily happen. And then for our long-term debt, that would be going down 17%. I've included about $500,000 for long-term debt defeasance in there to do a couple of things. First, to help moderate our tax levy and stabilize that over time, as well as kind of create a window of opportunity in the future where we've paid down some of our debt and let's say we run this middle school survey, and people are in favor of it, so we go and ask them, is this what you'd want in a referendum? When we're looking at what that would cost, it's going to cost less because there are pockets where we can place that debt where it's gone down now that we've paid some off, and it makes that just easier to do. So in total, for every $100,000 of assessed value, we're looking at an increase of $27.80. But again, really the most important thing on the sheet is that the estimates are very tentative. We don't know how many students we'll have. We don't know what the assessed value will be in the community. The state budget isn't finalized. And the, what am I missing? State aid hasn't been determined yet. So we're in a holding pattern. But this is an estimate of where we would be at. And it doesn't matter so much what's happening with our budget for some of these things. It happens more on what's happening with our value of our community. Because as you'll see as you go through, our revenue is increasing 0.2%, and our expenditures have gone down 4.9%. And you still see that we could possibly have a big levy increase. Big being 4.6. And that's the kind of thing where we want to make sure that we're working with our debt service levy to moderate that over time. If we didn't have that ability, we would just be stuck with whatever percentage that ends up being when the state gives us our aid. The tax rate historically, it's gone down 45% since 1986 for tracking this. Still historically low on an assessed basis. And then the next part of the packet is the budget document that's adopted by the board. And like I said, I'll let you read over this at your leisure, the additional 40 pages that are in there. If you have questions as you read through, just send them to me and I'll get those back out to the whole board so that everyone has the answers to that. And that's really it.
When will you come back to the board with another report? I mean, I know last year you took questions and you did send them all out, and that was helpful, but the next time you plan on coming back, it's to have another whole revised budget?
No. In July, we would come back and have the item on the agenda again after all your questions are answered to approve our draft 1 and get going with it. Generally, the only changes we make for draft 2 when we go to the annual meeting are tax related if we get additional information, and that's going to change. Generally, the other parts of it don't change too much. We don't have, the year hasn't started, we don't have any additional information on it. And then for the October budget, it's really reworked entirely based on the staff we have, the benefit choices they've made, the kids we have, and all of that.
I think one thing that's really important for board members, because no matter what our tax rate is, you know, at least in the last 9 years, we've gotten very little comments, I guess, or criticisms of the budget in terms of the levy and so on. At least we haven't administratively, and maybe you have as board members, but still I think this community is very supportive of education. But I think the big thing that we have got to start doing to be able to say two things: education is not manufacturing. We don't get to mark up things and then survive for a year or two by the markup taking care of whatever we have to do to operate. We're dealing with kids and costs, and the costs that we have to educate kids goes up every year. That's the nature of the beast, and especially if we're growing and have additional facilities and whatever it might be. But the real stinger, I think, is the points that Jim has mentioned, and that is that when you have a state government that is shifting the burden for vouchers and private school subsidies for parents back onto the backs of public education, is taking away from us, from kids we never had to begin with, that's a big deal. And that's what I don't think communities don't understand, and I think that's going to be, you know, some elevator discussion points that we could put together if we need to let people know that, you know, when we have a tax rate, whatever it is truly justified based on, number one, maintaining a quality education, but number two, based on the funding that we get and how that funding is determined by the state. And it's just not right. but unfortunately, we can't change it. And, you know, the legislature coming back and saying, oh, we're going to give you this $150 or whatever it was, they didn't give us anything. They took it out and they put it back in, and we still have a zero net as far as how that goes. So I think as a board, it's very important that we put together some real factual points that you can address your constituents with to say, you know, why is it what it is? You can say, here's why it is what it is. And and the reason we do that, however, number one is to maintain the programming and the excellent school system that we have. So, you know, Jim said it a couple times, there are things that people just don't know, and the general public just doesn't know all the undercurrents that go into us having to have certain facts and restrictions in terms of how we build a budget. And Jim does a phenomenal job at it each year, but we also are very fiscally responsible and prudent with our budget, as evidenced on how we've been able to do things over the years. So I say that as a little bit of a campaign that of our budgeting process, but more importantly for our community to realize, and I think most of them do, that, you know, to give quality education, you got to invest in it. But when people question where's the investment coming from and why is it what it is, we're able to say this is why it is what it is. And if we, every year we talk about the levy and reducing it and whatever it might be, we always have to be conscious that we can look good for 1 year. And if we make a mistake on how we do that, then next year we're going to get hammered. And we have to be very conscious of that, because we can try to appease a few people who may be, you know, critics of the tax base, but those same people will be twice as livid the following year if it goes up double. And so I just bring that to your attention. We talk about it every year, and so that's my soapbox.
So can I ask a few basic questions? So how many more staff are we funding? What's our FTE count, I guess? Can you, did that change here quickly?
Judy presented that a while back.
You
You should have that information, Linda, on the...
I don't think it changed much. The
Well,
overall.
I did see we're adding some
I think it went up
custodial.
like .33 with the educational staff.
With the educational staff,
It's less
we're
than
adding
one is-
custodials, right?
One custodial position for community use of the high school.
So that's all staff, I guess. What's the total FTE change? Is that in here?
No, that was part of the report that Dr. Miller gave.
And that was
a few
just
weeks back.
educational. I'm interested in the other support staff. I understand the educational piece. I'm just wondering about the other.
I think support staff was on there as well.
Yeah.
I mean broader support staff in terms of secretaries and,
There's no increase in FTE.
I'm just asking because I haven't read this. So.
Minimal, I think, was a new report with regard to, and then this additional custodian. So less than 2 FTE for next year. I would say less than 1.5 for next year.
Okay, I saw we got a report on co-curricular programs, and I'm just looking at this quickly here. I see we are revising the way we're compensating co-curriculars. Can you briefly describe? It looks like it's 100,000 more. We're spending more than.
I've asked Dr. Miller to provide a report for a future board meeting, more in depth on that,
Oh, okay.
because I thought there might be questions, so I don't think she's prepared tonight for that, so if that's okay, she'll have that at another board meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be glad to provide you with information about the process and the outcome. Mhm.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to make sure that I heard you. I think I found the numbers in here, but so our overall expenditures are going down by 4.9%?
Right, and that's mainly due to we're not doing any large projects
Okay.
like we have for the past 2 years.
So basically, the budget's pretty flat then?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's tied
because-
directly with the community growing at a rate faster or better than average in the state, and a decrease in state funding because of that, in addition to some of the other factors,
Right.
state budget and vouchers and all of that, to explain for kind of the growing, it's almost, you know, a growing gap between if we're doing better. State views that as a negative thing in terms of,
Right.
of funding for us, which increases then tax levy need.
Right, right.
Right, the
And this is
local taxes make up more of that pie
Right.
as opposed to the state aid. Thanks, Jim.
Although, I see here though, Jim, on page, just trying to get the page number here. Page 16, equalized value per student is actually going down, 1,384. Which,
Because it's staying the same in there, I'm projecting it to stay the same, and we're having more students. So when you divide it out, it's going down. We're not using that projection for next year. When the state looks at it, they look at last year.
Last year's.
And last year, we went up 4.52%.
and that's a known number.
Right.
I'm not guessing that number's known.
Right.
What is the enrollment's going up next year? I missed that part. Our
Enrollment?
student enrollment is going up next year?
We're
Or not really?
projecting
It's been kind of
10
flat, right?
10 students,
That's the
not
10,
huge.
that's overall, right? Okay, that's what I thought.
Resident students, 10
We
residents.
added 50 open enrollment, correct?
Moving in and going out, but
We added 56 open enrollment seats, but you got to remember, some of those kids graduate, some of them leave and go to other districts, so you would never go up that much.
Our enrollment is very, very fluid, particularly at the elementary level. One week, we could get 3 kids and lose 2, and next week get 9, lose 5. It just,
So as Mr. Milzer is requesting, send all the questions you need to on the budget, and he does a great job of answering them and providing the answers to everyone, so.
would it be possible, depending on how these questions come in and whatnot, to maybe do a 2-phase reply, instead of waiting until we get closer to when we're going to have the next budget? Do something.
I send them
maybe
out
in a-
as soon as I have them
Yeah.
done.
Oh, I thought last time we had a whole cumulative.
I think there were 2 big sheets
I
last
think
time.
Linda sent me over 70 questions, so
I don't think that was last year.
it was last year. It was 86 the year
She
before.
won't forget.
But who's counting?
Did I number them?
No, he did.
Oh, okay,
I had enough time to spend with them that I got to count them.
okay,
Uh,
all right.
So
Well,
it
I'm-
just
you
took a
know,
little longer to put all that together,
All right.
but as soon as I was done with it, then I sent it out.
Send it out. Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
I'll try and get my work done earlier this year. Tim, for you.
All right. I just,
All right,
In fact, I would have had it tonight if I would have had it earlier.
all right, thank you very much.
Next
Oh, Okay, item 10, board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments? All right, hearing none. Future agenda items, we have a technology report on June 24th. Also on June 24th, Kathy Hahn will be here presenting the Franklin Health Department Anti-Tobacco Billboard winner recognitions. Just want to let you know Kathy Hahn is also retiring very soon, which is a big loss to the whole health department and school district, I think. And any other comments about future agenda items?
Well, you had mentioned we're going to add the activity, athletics and activities item.
Yeah, so Dr. Miller, when you have that ready for the board, you can just let us know.
I'll send it directly out to you.
Oh,
so
yeah,
you
we
can
thought that would be,
sooner than later.
sure. Yeah, I mentioned it was a
Probably
board
have
meeting, but
something
I-
out next week to you
Okay.
with more information.
Mhm. All right, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You don't have to wait for it then.
okay, great.
Do you want to discuss it, though, at the board? I mean, I appreciate the information, but would the board want to talk
The
about it?
study's been completed. I mean, it was a process, and I can share that with you and the outcome of it, certainly. But, yeah, after you see it, perhaps you can make a decision regarding that.
Okay.
Are those are outside of the negotiated contract, correct?
They are now, yes.
They are now.
Yes. We had tried many times to do this prior to Act 10, because they were positions that were part of the bargain agreement. And often we tried to make changes and they were not agreed to. So we've now done a thorough study and made the appropriate changes with regard to our.
So you're saying since Act 10?
Okay,
they've been-
it's not on the agenda.
Oh, well, see, that's why I wanted
Yeah.
to-
I'll bring more
Yeah.
information. And you can certainly contact me
Yeah, you
with
can.
your questions.
Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lewis. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:59.